Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Eva. I'm working for Philantropia, and Philantropia is a consulting company, training company that works with many NGOs around the world to develop a fundraising strategy, to find potential donors, and to support in proposal writing. And today's webinar is going to be about social media for NGOs and social media in fundraising. So we will be talking about social media in general, why do you need it, etc., and also how to design a fundraising campaign, etc. Philantropia also offers a wide range of online courses about different topics like proposal writing, developing a strategy, but also very specific ones like fundraising from USAID and topics like that. So if you're interested in that, stay until the end, because we'll also have a little surprise for you where you can maybe join some of our courses for a reduced price. My name is Eva. Again, I already told you that. I'm from Germany, and I have been working for Philantropia since 2018, I think. We started the office in Nepal. And I have a PhD in geography. I used to work in Nepal for 7 years with small grassroots NGOs in organizational capacity development and sustainability issues. So that's kind of my background. But I also did a lot of press work for different organizations. So that's why I also know a lot about social media. That's why I can share with you today. And I also run 2 blogs. So that's also experience that I can draw from. We will share information, the presentation, I think at least parts of it, and further links with you through email. And we have all of your email addresses because you already signed up, so you don't have to type in your email address again. We will share some follow-up emails with you so that you don't have to worry about taking too many notes, etc. You will get some material and also a link to the recording. Yeah, as you've all noticed, this is recorded, so you already had to press OK to agree with that, but just so that you know that we're recording this webinar and sharing on YouTube later. Okay, and I think with that said, we can already get started and just jump right into the topic. And I will start sharing my screen. We will have time for questions at the end, but if you have any questions for me while I'm going through the material, you can type them into the chat box, and my team will make sure that I can that I answer them at the end. I will also go through the chat box at the end and try to find all the questions. If I miss anything, my team will make sure that I see them, and you can ask me questions in the end. We will have around 15 minutes for Q&A through typing in the chat box as well. Okay, so we will jump right in. Let me see. Okay. I hope you can all see my screen now. If nobody says no, then I just believe that that's the case. So today's topic is social media and how to use it to reach your fundraising goals. So I'm guessing that most of you are from NGOs, maybe grassroots NGOs, small NGOs, and you are wondering how you can use social media to actually extend your fundraising, to reach more people, and to become more successful. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Again, my name is Eva Wieners. I'm a fundraising consultant and trainer. And if you want to connect with me, you can also find me on LinkedIn. You can find, obviously, Philantropia and Proposals for NGOs on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., all the social media channels. So I would really ask you to follow us on those channels as well. Follow us on YouTube so that you never miss any of our updates again. We will talk about the necessity and importance of a network later. So this is me already starting by telling you that you can network with me, that you can join us on our own social media, because that is how you develop a network and how you kind of get acquainted with others. We will start today by talking about social media for NGOs. So which platforms should you choose, how many, etc. And to see what is your target group. Then we will talk about finding your voice. What does that mean? So we'll talk about actual voice, like how do you want to frame posts, but also your target group, your communication goals, etc. And then we'll talk about why NGOs need social media. So what's the necessity? What can you actually achieve by using them? Because it's obviously also a time investment. And in the end, we'll talk a little bit about how to actually make a successful fundraising campaign on social media using, for example, Facebook fundraising or the tools that are provided by specific platforms. Okay, we'll jump right in with the first chapter, social media for NGOs. So obviously, if you ask yourself, probably most of you already have a Facebook page, have some profiles on social media, but still you have to consider if you work for an NGO, if you work for any kind of organization, even if you work for a business, social media always sounds great because you can reach so many people, but at the same time, you always have to understand and realize that it's an investment, even if it's not a monetary investment, because you don't have to pay for signing up, you don't have to pay to have a page on Facebook, but you do have to invest your time, and your time is also worth money. If you are employed, obviously you can really understand how much your time is worth because it's your salary. But even if you just work as a volunteer, or if you work for an initiative without being paid, your time is valuable. So you really have to make a strategic decision if you do want to be on social media, what kind of presence you want to have, how much time you want to invest, etc. So just keep all those things in mind before you make the decision. But the first question obviously is, if you use social media for NGOs, can you reach anybody? And you all know the answer to that. Obviously it's yes, because so many people are on social media. Here we have some statistics from January 2021, and they haven't changed much since then. We've had the population, almost 8 billion people. Out of those, more than half live in urban areas. So urban areas with better internet access, because in many specific, even here in Germany, I'm from Germany, I live here. If I just drive 20 kilometers out to the countryside, then the internet is very sketchy. So even those things are problematic, and even more so in developing countries where sometimes there's no internet at all if you live in the countryside, or if you are not in urban areas. But more than half of the population do live in urban areas, so they probably have access to some kind of internet. Mobile phones have been a huge driver in social media use because everybody has social media on their phone. And everybody is using these apps on the phone. In some countries, Facebook is even like equal with internet. So when people say I'm using Facebook, they mean they use the internet because they only go through that app. So out of the population, 66% do have mobile phones, so they potentially have access to all those social media platforms. Internet users, again, 60%, so half or more than half, 60% of the world population are internet users. So it's a huge target group that you have there at the tip of your fingers. And then active social media users, more than half of the world population are using some kind of social media. So either Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, etc. One of those, or oftentimes several of those. So there's a huge potential if you do use social media strategically for your NGO, there's huge potential to reach so many people. So if you have the resources, if you have the time, if you can do it, you should definitely consider doing it. But then the next question is always, on which social media platforms should we have a presence? Here on the left, you see many icons. I don't even know all of them. I have this Instagram on here. There's those Apple ads, apps where you can communicate. There's Reddit, there's WhatsApp, obviously Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the ones we know, but I don't even know most of those. Not all of them are directly social media platforms, but all of them are platforms that you could potentially use to share content about your organization. But do you think it would be a good idea to have a profile, to have a presence on all of these platforms? I wouldn't say so, because obviously, like we said, it's a time investment, and it's always better to choose strategically which platforms you want to use. So it's always better to use one or two and invest the time that you have and do that very well, instead of using having a profile on 10 platforms and not having the time to actually put good content on them, to put good stories on them, to use them strategically. So if you have to make the decision, we'll talk a little bit about how you can make that decision. It's always better to start just with a couple. If you read a little bit about social media use now, people will, in marketing, everybody will tell you that nowadays you have to have like a multi-platform approach. So yes, using multiple platforms, not only one, because you will also reach very different people if you use different platforms. And that is true. But again, if you don't have the resources, if you only have the time to really have a good account that has constant content that you can manage, where you can answer comments, etc. If you only have time to do one, then it's always better to just do one really well instead of having 5 and all of them are bad. Because if you have a social media account that is not kept well, that is not updated frequently, that can actually hurt you. Because, for example, when I find a project, I find an organization that I think is interesting, I always go to their social media platform. And if the last post was from 2020 and there's absolutely no updates since then for me, that's a signal that it's either the organization is not active anymore or there's some other kind of issue. So yeah, make sure that you really have the time to work with the platforms that you can. But how can you choose which platforms to work with? Obviously, I would say it's always better to choose one of the big ones. Here it's a little bit, these statistics are from, I think they were from 2020, so not even that old, but it still has Snapchat and 2019, okay? But Snapchat, I think, is not really becoming that big of a platform. In 2019, you see, we didn't have TikTok yet. TikTok is huge nowadays. So definitely, if you would pull this data from 2021, then you would find TikTok on here, probably with a very similar age structure than Snapchat. But you see how quickly things are changing. But again, I would recommend to use, if you start using social media, just choose some of the big ones that have many users already, that are known, that have good structures, etc. And here we have the distribution by age group, because that's very interesting. Later we will talk about developing a communication strategy, and there you have to think about who you want to reach. What do you want to achieve with your communication? And that translates into who you want to reach, because if you want to get many small donations and just basically become more known, then maybe it's a good idea to reach many young people, because they will share and maybe they have $1 to spare. But if you want to create huge donations by older individuals, then maybe it's not a good idea to make a TikTok account, because you will just not find those people there. So you have to know what you want to achieve with your communication and your social media use, and then you can choose a platform. Because here you can see YouTube is relatively homogeneous. So you have many young people, 18 to 24, middle-aged. It's almost all of the age groups are on there, except for the 65 plus years. It's only 38%. But still, with YouTube, you can reach many people. At the same time, YouTube is one of the more work-intensive channels, because to produce good video content takes a lot of time investment. As you need a good camera, you need someone who can manage, who can cut the videos, edit the videos, etc. So YouTube is not the easiest social media platform to break into, because there's many people on there doing this very professional, and it's difficult to break through. But then you have Facebook. Facebook, I think, is the one that you can use. It's the easiest to use. It's very self-explanatory, and having a Facebook page is always good publicity. And you see across the age groups, you get a good coverage. Again, the lowest is 65 years plus, but again, you also have to remember those people probably are less on the internet anyways, because they are not digital natives. They didn't grow up with the internet, so they might be hesitant anyways. But still, you can almost reach half of those people on Facebook. So if your target group is older people and middle-aged people, Facebook is the platform to use. Then if we look at Instagram, you have many, many young people and few older people, and you see the drop. So again, if you want to reach young people, if you just want to create awareness and you don't care so much about raising money in the first step, because usually very young people don't have money to donate or a little bit more hesitant to donate. Most donors are in the middle age group or even older. Then you can use Instagram. The same for Snapchat, but again, I think Snapchat is not so relevant anymore, but you can almost replace it with TikTok, I would say. And it's the same. Young people, you love TikTok. It's very quick, it's video content, everything happens fast. That's a platform that older people do not use. I think you will find very few 65 plus people on TikTok because it's just way too much. It's even too much for me. I'm 37, and if I look at TikTok with my daughter, I'm like, oh, we get a headache from all those blinking things at the whole time. So this is a platform absolutely not geared at older people. This is for young people. Again, if you want to raise awareness amongst youth, then that's the platform to use. That's where to go. Twitter is a little bit different, has a little bit more of a wide age structure. Again, Twitter is more to really have like discussions, to raise a point. It's not so flashy. It's not so much for raising just awareness, for sharing pictures. It's more for really real content. So if you want to talk about issues, if you want to become someone who has a voice in specific discussions, then use Twitter. That also works well. So just to understand, social media is not every platform is the same. There are many differences that you have to understand before you choose which platform you want to go with. This is just age. You can do this. You can find these breakups for countries, for interests, etc. And it makes a lot of sense to check this before you choose. But if you want to start, a safe bet is always Facebook, even though younger people, very young people, are not found on Facebook so much anymore. But still, most of them have a presence there. So discuss those decisions with your team, because social media, even if you have a social media manager, it's often a team effort to put content on those platforms. You need pictures from the field, you need someone to take videos, you need someone to support you with other material, etc. And if the people in your team are not willing to provide you with content, not willing to support your decisions, etc., then you will have issues. So discuss the decision, which platforms to use, and also which kind of content you want to share there, which kind of content you have with your team. And then you can move from there. So you have everyone on board, everybody agrees with your decision, and you can just move forward as a team. Yeah, then you select the specific platforms that you want to use. Again, here's a choice of, we have Twitter. Twitter is always good if you have, if you are very knowledgeable in one topic, if you want to share actual like conversation pointers, etc. Twitter is different though, because you have the character limit. It's a little bit longer now than it used to be, but still it's not so visual. So it's different content. You can't post the same stuff that you post on Instagram on Twitter. It doesn't work. Instagram, Facebook are more similar, so sometimes you can reuse content, but still it should have a little bit of a different focus. LinkedIn is a professional platform, which is good to connect, also for NGOs, but again, requires a very different form of content. Because also on LinkedIn, people want to learn something new. They want to see what is in it for them, what's the benefit for their business, for their career, etc. So again, just read a lot about the platforms, decide what you want to achieve with your communication, and then choose a couple of social media platforms that you do want to use, and make sure that you have the resources, you have the content, and you have the time to actually fill them with content, answer to comments, engage in discussion, etc. constantly. You will see that many INGOs, many big organizations do have a social presence on different platforms. This is the Facebook profile of the UNDP, for example. And when you start, it makes a lot of sense to follow those profiles that are interesting for you and start interacting with them, obviously. No? It's called social media, and there's the focus on the social part. So you have to interact, you have to talk to people, you have to let them know what you do, ask them questions, get them to engage with you, follow you, etc. And the best you can do that is through comments, through likes, and just being active on those social media. If you just have a profile and post something every second week and you never comment and you never like anything else and you never answer to your own comments, then your social media profiles will not grow. You will not have any traction and it will be an issue. So just look at competitors, look at other organizations in the same field. What are they doing? Which profiles are they following? Also follow them. Like, cooperation is always good. You can always learn from others, and just create those networks that are extremely important in the long run. Then the second part, I want to talk about finding your voice. And there's two sides to that. So first of all, it's really about tone, like which kind of words, which kind of voice do you want to use on your social media, which is extremely important that you have a strategy for that, that it's always the same. Sometimes different people manage a social media account, and you shouldn't be able from the outside to say, oh, this one is written by one person and this one is written by somebody else, if it's not a quote or if it's not flagged that way. So you have to decide first, why are you using those social media channels? Do you want to attract potential donors, or do you want to communicate better with your beneficiaries? You can also use social media for that. Or do you just want to inform the general public about what you are doing and what need support for, etc. So those are very different goals, no? And again, that requires different audiences. So you have to strategically decide which platforms you want to use. But it also requires a very different tone, because if you want to attract donors, you have to need some trustworthiness. You need, I wouldn't say like you should have a super joking tone or super casual, because the donors will want to see that you're responsible, that your organization handles money responsibly, etc. So probably if you want to attract potential donors, don't post pictures of your office party or something like that, or at least not all the time if it's a crazy party. If it's about your beneficiaries or the beneficiaries you work with, the project participants, you can obviously post stuff that is a little bit more internal, what's going on in projects, what is needed, where are you, what are next steps, etc. Something that maybe even people from the outside won't understand. So that's, again, it's a different tone. And yeah, if you're just informing the general public, again, you have to start from a very different starting point, because you probably have to go in deeper, explain more, etc. Those are strategic decisions that you have to make. And then again, you can think about which voice will be best to achieve this. Can it be like a funny voice, always just joking around, or should it be more casual or very serious, etc. Some organizations have different voices on different channels. So, for example, if you go to TikTok, like I think it was the German Red Cross, they were making like funny videos about how not to wear a mask, and they just made a video of like stupid ways of wearing a mask, etc. But obviously on LinkedIn, the German Red Cross will post very differently. They won't post that funny stuff, but they're talking to somebody else, so they need a different voice. So they're more somber, explaining about their activities, explaining what they are doing, etc. But then, like we said before, the first step, maybe even before that, or to help you understand what your voice should be, is to define your communication goals. And that is a stage that many organizations just jump over, and they just jump in and start creating social media platforms and just posting something here, something there. And sometimes, like I said, even different people manage the channel, and then somebody's posting a funny picture, the next person is posting like a pity plea, and it just looks weird to the outside, and it won't help you to achieve your communication goals. So that is a discussion that you should have with your team when you develop a strategy. That will be the next slide. But you have to define your communication goals, and that seems so easy, but if you really honestly think about what do you want to achieve with by sharing stuff on social media, or even by sharing stuff on your website, what do you want to achieve by sharing pictures, etc. those can be very different goals. Again, if you only have fundraising in mind, then you would share very different things than if it's also about awareness. Maybe in some of your projects, the social media channels will be part of the project, because if you run an awareness campaign, social media account can be hugely beneficial to raise awareness about a specific topic. But obviously that's a different communication goal. Or if you just want to reach younger people, reach older people, maybe you just want to inform people internally, also that is possible. But those are different, require different strategies. So sit down with your team and find out, what are your communication goals? What do you want to achieve with by using social media? And maybe even if you have time, if you have more resources, to find out, what do you want to achieve with the different networks that you're using? Again, maybe you want to use TikTok to raise awareness and to attract younger people to your cause, because if you manage to attract young people very early, then they will probably stick with your cause and maybe support it later. So TikTok can be great for that. If you manage to be like in the feed of many young people and can raise awareness about your cause, well, that's amazing. And then you could use Facebook to raise funds, but then again, telling different stories, talking to different audience, to actually motivate people to give you money. Those are communication goals that you should write down, in your communication strategy, and then also match up with the correct tools to achieve those goals. When you develop a strategy in anything, you always start by looking where you're at, what you have done in the past, what's the current situation. Then you decide where you want to go, so defining goals, what we had on the slide before, and then you decide how you want to get there. So you can, right now, you can look at the things that you're already doing. Is that the communication that you want to have in the future? Or maybe you just want to, maybe you already have your communication goals very clear, and you just want to achieve more people, have more people following you, etc. Those can obviously also be the goals. And then you have to decide how you want to get there. So if you are like on the very first stages of developing a strategy, and you really just defined your communication goals, for example, getting more money, being more successful in fundraising, then you can define, okay, to raise more money through fundraising campaigns on social media, we will work more on Facebook, we will post more on Facebook, we will focus on developing fundraising campaigns and talking to high value individuals, etc., something like that. So you define how you want to get there, and it is an important process. Social media seems so easy because it's intuitive. We all use it privately. So many times we see NGOs approaching this more as like a game or something just fun, which it should be fun, obviously. But still, you need some underlying strategy, and everything that you do on social media should fit within that strategy, because if you don't have it, you might be pulling into different directions. If you have different people on your channels, they might be posting very different messages, etc. And that's, in the long term, is going to be an issue. And then when you develop a strategy, you should also think about how you want to deal with criticism, because if you open your organization, yourself up, and share stuff on social media, at some point you will get backlash. It doesn't matter what you do, but in today's world, that's the reality. So you do need a strategy for that, because in those times it can get super hectic. And then if you don't have a strategy and you don't know how to deal with it, then catastrophes happen. You see that with brands all the time when they get called out on something they did wrong. And then sometimes it's just the intern. It's like a running joke in marketing already. Oh, the intern wrote this. Because if you don't have a strategy for how to deal with criticism, people can get defensive and sometimes post something defensive in the name of the organization or the company, and then that looks very bad on you. So even if you think you will never get into a shitstorm, you just never know. So you need a strategy. I have this example from my own background. I used to work with a small NGO in Nepal. Everything was great, and we never thought about like what should happen. We worked in agroforestry. We were just sharing like nice pictures. Everything was good. But then the earthquake happened, and we didn't have, we didn't have a lot of internet, so I was just like, I was working, trying to get like food and shelter to people. And the few minutes of internet I had, I connected with my family, obviously. And then I I knew a comedian, and he had quite some following, and I knew him personally. So I sent him an email and I said, look, this happened here, but I saw one of your jokes and it made me laugh. So thank you for that. That was like a personal story that I shared. And then I went back to the village for 2 days distributing rice and lentil and tents, etc. And I came back and we were buried because this guy had shared my email, which was nice, with a link to a crowdfunding campaign. And we had raised more money than ever before. But at the same time, people were saying I was a liar, I was a scammer. Were like saying, how is it possible after the earthquake that she writes this email instead of connecting with her family? People make up so much stuff. I was so surprised because it was a genuine, honest email. And that, yes, that the thing that they kept saying was it had typos. And yes, it did have typos because I was in a stressful situation. But it was incredible for me. And we didn't have a strategy in place. So while I was gone, I didn't even see it and read it. And people from our organization just chimed in here, chimed in there, and that didn't make it look good. So in the end, we got way more donations than ever before. So it was still a good ending for us. But I think we could have dealt way better with something like that if we had a strategy. If we just had one person, if it's just sure that you say, okay, one person will answer these emails. Something that you will probably have to deal with at some point is people asking you if you have permission to share pictures that you're sharing. And you should obviously always ensure that you do have that permission, but you need a good answer for that. Because if somebody says, oh, there's a child on this picture, do you have the parents' permission to share the picture? Obviously, you need the permission of the parents to share pictures, but then you should also have a good answer. And it's always better to write that answer without any pressure than writing it somewhere on the phone when you don't have a lot of time. So think about these things before they happen and have a strategy in place. So be prepared and also have a system in place to detect it quickly, because sometimes these discussions don't happen on your post, but somewhere else. So I would recommend you set up like a Google alert for specific keywords so that stuff also pops up if it doesn't happen directly on your post, because these things, they just grow by themselves if you don't do anything. And don't feed the trolls. Some people are just stupid on social media specifically. You are allowed to delete comments. I would say if people are rude, if something is not okay, you can delete a comment, but you should never delete like a valid criticism, because then that is not a good look. So again, for those things, you need strategies in place. You need to think about them before you do them. You have to react to reasonable arguments in time. You can't delete everything negative. That is always a bad look. But obviously, if someone is just trolling you for some reason, you are more than allowed to block and delete. And yeah, just make sure that you know how to respond and that you have a strategy in place so that you're not surprised or overwhelmed in case it happens. Because probably at least at a small scale, at some point it will happen, because people on the internet are ruthless, as you probably all know. If they sit behind a computer, they feel like they have the permission to say anything. And unfortunately, when you open yourself up and yeah, share stuff, you make yourself vulnerable for this kind of stuff as well. Then again, why do NGOs need social media? I think we've talked about this as well, but it's just some of the benefits of using social media platforms and what it would be good for. So you can share your work. Obviously, you can share pictures, videos, information about the projects that you do, the projects that you implement, etc. You can share your events, which is always great if you want people to join and work with you or visit an event, or just want them to know what's happening, etc. You can even create invitations, for example, on Facebook that can be shared easily and then can be like a forum for interchange. So that's a good thing that you can use. You can get a very direct connection to your audience, so the people you want to talk to. If you want to talk to beneficiaries, for example, you can tag people. You can say, are you coming to this? Did you read this? Can you share here, etc. You can actually do some work in some of these groups. And it's a direct connection. You can see a picture of people, you get a direct feedback, etc. They have great tools that you can use that you don't have to buy the plugin for, etc. So messaging, obviously, but also polls, feedback. You can collect all of that stuff through social media platforms, and it's going to be hugely beneficial. You can also connect with potential donors and supporters, obviously. It always makes sense to follow foundations that are working in your area, to follow big NGOs, etc., and share stuff with them, tag them, etc., to make sure that they see you. That's a good way to make a first entry, a first contact. You can do direct fundraising. We'll talk about the tools a little bit later. Just having the direct access to them. And asking for direct donations. You can run campaigns. You can ask your supporters to collect for their birthday, etc. There's so many ways of doing this. Networking. It's a great way to network, to use all these tools, to connect with other people, to change ideas, to ask them what they're doing, etc. Connect with similar organizations, the same. I don't like the word competition, because I feel like in this field we are mostly working for very similar goals. So obviously sometimes NGOs compete for funds, etc. But in general, if it's the same goals, then I wouldn't say it's a competition, but it's maybe colleagues. So connecting is great. Social media also helps you to use very visual media. So you can share, it's easy to share videos, it's easy to share pictures that attract people to read more, to learn more about your project. And yeah, it generates exposure for your project, your organization, your cause in general, your approach, whatever you want to promote. So you can easily, without having to invest a lot of money, create exposure. Obviously, all these things are great, but at the same time, you have to keep in mind, using social media is free, but obviously they are getting paid by your data. So it's not a completely free thing. And at the same time, if you only rely on social media for all of these things, for connecting with beneficiaries, connecting with other organizations, networking, etc., then you are very vulnerable for them to change their rules. So if your complete network is only on Facebook, and one day your Facebook account gets blocked, or Facebook changes its policy and starts to charge, then you have a big problem. So I would always recommend to, yes, use all these tools, but also at the same time collect email addresses on your newsletter so that you can connect with people in different ways. If you use it to work with beneficiaries, be very conscious about data protection, stuff like that. So don't make them share any personal vulnerable data on these social media channels. Then I would recommend to use other ways of communicating. And just make sure that you always have an alternative way of connecting as well. Yeah, with social media, you have a very easy way to connect or to find a new audience at the tip of your fingers, where you don't have to pay a lot of money. Yes, obviously you have to invest time, which is also valuable, but still it's a great tool to find new people, to get more exposure, to learn more about others, and let others know about your work. So it's a great tool to get access to a new audience, and also to use all those direct fundraising tools that are out there that are connected to social media, and that can be really useful to work with crowdfunding campaigns, to raise money from individuals, etc. So in the last part, we just quickly want to give you some pointers on how to plan and implement a successful fundraising campaign on social media. So many social media platforms have built into their platform a fundraising tool. So Facebook, for example, is the most known and easiest, where you can collect donations on Facebook. Then you have this, you can set your fundraising goal, and you have this bar that shows how much money has already been donated, etc. I think you have to register somehow, and obviously for some countries it's a big issue to connect through PayPal, etc., because that structure is not available yet. But I think this will change in the future. And even if you're not using Facebook fundraising directly, you can apply all these pointers that I'm giving you for crowdfunding campaigns as well, because this is very similar. Facebook fundraising is crowdfunding on a different platform, but you can also do this through GoFundMe, through all these other platforms for crowdfunding that are out there. So you start by setting your fundraising goal. So you need a number. And this is the great thing about all these crowdfunding campaigns. If you set a reasonable number, you're much more likely to achieve that than if it's high or if you have no number. Like if you just have a donation page on a website somewhere, then for people, it's very abstract to understand what would be done with their money, what will happen, etc. But if you have a goal that is reasonable, that is connected to something very specific, that they understand, okay, if I give $100, then they will pay a week of schooling with that, or they will feed 100 people with that, or something like that, something specific, something that the people can actually imagine is actually happening, then you're much more likely to actually achieve that fundraising goal. Then you need a theme and title, obviously. Try to find a catchy title for your project, nothing too technical, because we're in social media, it needs to be catchy. People need to want to share it. Then you can also choose a hashtag to share, and then make sure that you keep using it, and there's nothing like too time constricted, so that you can use it in another campaign again, maybe, or longer term. Pick your start and end dates, and think about content you want to share within your campaign. That's important in all crowdfunding pages. You always have the option to share news and updates, etc. So think about what you want to share, put it in a calendar, and make sure that it is shared, because people do want to know what's happening. And then you can build a landing page. If you use Facebook, it's pretty clear, it does it for you. Any other crowdfunding platform is very similar. Usually they have a toolbox, or you can even do this on your own homepage. Then assign team roles during the campaign. Make sure that everybody knows what they have to do. Again, think about how you would deal with criticism if you get any, just to make sure that you show that you're responsible, that you're answering to valid criticism, that you've thought your project through, etc. And then don't forget to monitor and evaluate to understand what you could maybe still change, what you can do better, and what you can maybe use for the future. What are lessons learned? Here are just the two examples of the Facebook fundraising tools of an organization called Purify H20. They fundraise very successfully. They have good visuals. They have a good landing page, etc. So just look around on Facebook or on any social media platform, any crowdfunding platform that you do want to use, to see what others do, if it works well, what you can learn from them, and what you can maybe take away. To be successful with all these platforms, but also any crowdfunding platform, is to develop your network even before you have a campaign, and also continue developing your network when your first campaign has ended, because organizations that only share stuff on their social media when they are fundraising are always a little suspicious to me. So I would, when I follow an organization, I would hope and expect them to always share information, to always share content, even when they're not fundraising at the moment, because otherwise it just looks like you're only on social media for the money, and that shouldn't be your only goal. Also develop adequate means of communication to engage your network constantly. So for example, a newsletter. If you have a newsletter, you have much more direct access to people, because you can actually deliver information into their inboxes. And you do have the email addresses. So like I said, if anything changes, if Mark Zuckerberg sells Facebook to Elon Musk, and Elon Musk wants to do something different with it, or now even like that's just made up, but I mean, he's trying to buy Twitter and he wants to change rules. So all people are freaking out on Twitter that have like huge following and use that for their business or for their professional life, because they don't know what's going to happen. But if you do have a newsletter, nobody can take away those email addresses from you. So try to also develop those tools that you have more control over. and make sure that you have the resources. So whenever you plan your budget for the next year, and you know that you want to work with social media, that you want to have different profiles, make sure that this is also reflected in your budget, that you have money to pay someone, that you yourself have time to do this, etc. If you do use social media to reach out, to create awareness, etc., it's always good to think about ways how to tell a story. Social media is it's a great channel, a great instrument to use for storytelling, and storytelling creates emotion. And if you are able to create emotion amongst the people that follow you, that read your articles, read your comments, look at your pictures, then they're much more likely to be also converted into a donor, into a supporter. So you can learn more about storytelling on our website as well. And we also have a webinar out about storytelling that you can check out. But if you write stories, if you share pictures, it's really important that you are able to create emotion, that if possible, readers can identify with the story, at least with parts of it, that they feel something positive, because if they do have positive emotions, they will be much more likely to donate again. But also that your stories, that whatever you share clearly communicates what kind of support you need. So if you're looking for volunteers, if you're looking for money, what do you need to achieve what, etc., needs to be clearly communicated. Yeah, and again, the importance of your network. It's really crucial that you build your network even before you have a campaign, because when you have a campaign, when you want to use social media for fundraising, you need people to share your posts, because the snowball effect only happens if people comment, interact, and share your posts, and that's what you want. And people will only do that if they feel like you're genuine, and if they feel, yeah, like valued as a follower. And that means that you need to start before you have a fundraising goal. So raising funds shouldn't be the only reason that you start working on social media. Obviously, it can be the final goal, but if it's the only goal, then your followers will feel that, will realize that, and will not be happy about that. And you should engage your network regularly. So not only when you have a campaign, not only when you want something from them, but also when you want to share, when you have some great news, etc. Yeah, and with that, we come to the end of this presentation. And I just want to say best of luck with all your fundraising campaigns on social media. Maybe you already have experiences, maybe you're just getting started, but I think, and I hope that I was able to give you some pointers today. For further learning, I want to share one of the courses that we have with you, because I have developed a course on online fundraising specifically. So that's where we talk more about crowdfunding as well, but also about the website, all the tools you can use, the target groups that you can access through online fundraising, etc. So you see, we have we have a video presentation, but also further reading about the website, email marketing, social media, all the different platforms, next steps that you can take to actually have a strategy, etc. And usually that course is sold at $75, but today we want to give you the opportunity to jump on it for only $25, because you joined us for this webinar. So this is an offer that is only valid for 2 days. So either you get it right now, I'm sure my team will share the link into the comment section right now. Get it right now, or you can get it tomorrow, but then this offer is gone. So then the price is back up to $75. So if you're interested in this, if you want to learn more about online fundraising, how to use your website, how to use email marketing to actually get people to become donors, to follow you, etc., I recommend you jump on it right now and take advantage of this great offer of only having to pay $25 instead of $75 today. We will also send you a follow-up email with the link again, but if you have the means to do this, I recommend you do it right now. We also have other courses on our website, philantropia.org, that you can check out. Here's just some examples, like fundraising from US foundations, writing a project plan, or how to raise funds from European foundations. But we also have courses about USAID, writing a log frame, Gulf donors, etc. So many, many different potential donors and more technical courses as well. And because you participated in this course today, you can also get 30% discount on all of those courses on our site. So check out philantropia.org, and if you see anything that you like there, use the code PFN users, and you will get 30% discount on all of those courses. We also have a couple of free courses, like how to find 50 donors in 10 minutes, something about strategy in Corona times, etc. So if you're interested, you can also check them out, obviously. Okay, and now we still have some time for questions. I will just stop the screen sharing and see what which questions we have. Okay, so I'm just reading from my phone because my team already sent me a couple of questions. So what did you mean by not posting the same thing on all social media handles? Just that sometimes I see people that just either in blogging or also on organizations that just keep posting the same thing. So they have a picture of a meeting and they say, they said, okay, we had this meeting, this happened, and then they post the exact same thing on Instagram, the exact same thing on Facebook, exact same thing on Twitter, maybe with less characters. And that's just not working because you have very different audiences. You need to do, like, if it's Instagram, it needs to be a beautiful picture and maybe like more hashtags, obviously, and the text should maybe be a little bit more inspirational. That works better on Instagram, I would say. Facebook, you can have a longer text, maybe, even though also research shows that short text is better, like 3 sentences is the gets most engagements. And then again, Twitter is more specific, it's not so flowery, etc. It doesn't need so many pictures. It's more about the facts. And maybe also tagging specific organizations, etc. So just make sure that you know who you are talking to and what kind of content you want to convey. And then I just saw here that Marisol was saying it's very important to ensure that you have a clear call to action. Yes, that's 100% true. It's always really important here to make sure that people understand what you want from them. That's why I included in one slide, but maybe I didn't stress it enough. Social media is so fast, so people just scroll through it and they don't have a lot of time. So if you write like a long text and then you say at the bottom, we need you to do this, then very few people will read that. But if you have a clear call to action in the beginning and people understand it, that's always much better, because social media has a very, very short attention span, and people decide within 1 or 2 seconds if they want to interact with your post or not. So it needs to be catchy, and people need to immediately understand what you want from them, because only then will they interact. So Paul was asking which of these platforms is best for NGOs to raise funds or communicate with their donors. That's not a question I can answer that way. It depends a lot on what the work you do, on the people that you want to reach. No? If you are happy to have 100,000 small donors, TikTok can work great. TikTok can raise a lot of funds because if you have like a viral video, it can go out and you can reach many people that might be willing to give you $1 or $5. But obviously, if you want to find 10 people who give you 1,000, then maybe a platform like Twitter or Facebook is more is going to work better for you. It depends a lot on your work, also the kind of people that you can talk to. Or if you're working in something super dry, like if you work in data processing, NGOs do work in that area, no? It's very difficult to sell that on social media. So then maybe Twitter is your place, because maybe it's easier to connect with people who are passionate about something that is more challenging to be passionate about. I would say that, like, from my background, I'm not a huge data person. But if you work with kids or something like with the environment, etc., you can use that. You can produce beautiful pictures, you can produce videos, you can share that on platforms like YouTube or TikTok, etc., to reach younger people. So it depends a lot on that. If you didn't start anything, I would always say start with Facebook. But this might differ for different organizations. It's not like a one-for-all solution. But I think Facebook is still the platform where you can reach many, many people, and where you can be successful, even like with a broader audience. And then there's a question about what are the checks to verify whether an NGO is fake or not? That's a difficult question. I mean, I think if someone really wants to betray or wants to like paint a fake picture, it's possible. But usually, if I find something that I find interesting, I check their website. If everything looks good, I look into the imprint. Like if the address given in the imprint is not in the country that they work in, etc., then that's always a sign that something might be off. Then I check their social media. If it's like not kept well, for me, that's a sign that maybe not necessarily that they're fake, but that they're not active. So I check that. Then I Google and see. And if I really have like a suspicion, I Google the name and the word fraud. And sometimes stuff comes up, like if somebody has written a blog article or something. And if I don't find, you could also obviously ask for registration documents and stuff like that. But that's many steps ahead, I would say. I think many times you get a very good idea if you really check all their channels. So if you check the website, check all their social media, check the press, etc. And if there's any red flags there, then maybe investigate further. But sometimes I feel like if somebody really wants to cheat you, then they will be successful. But it has never happened to me. I've never come across fake, like organizational fake profiles. Personal ones, yes, obviously, but I've never come across one of those. I've never dealt with that in specific. Okay. I think those were most of the questions. I hope I caught all of them. But yeah, thank you very much for taking part in this training. Again, if you have the opportunity to get the course on online fundraising, I would love to see you there. Hope you can join us, and also check out all of our other courses and resources that we have on philantropia.org. And for now, yeah, thank you again for joining. I hope you will join us again in 2 or 3 weeks in our next webinar. Follow us on social media to make sure that we stay connected, that we have you in our network as well, and that you can join us again for our next webinar. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.